I'm joined with my co-host Max.
What's up, guys?
And sorry we missed last week. Both me and Max, obviously, in college and life got kind of crazy. Both I was gonna do predictions, and I totally forgot about it. Like last minute, I ran out of time. But we're gonna cover this week. We're gonna try to go through it pretty quickly, and then go through our predictions. College time again. Me and Max are both pretty busy, but we're trying to get this in. It was a pretty good week of football, per usual. So the first game that we have going on here, we have the Buccaneers and the Eagles. Buccaneers take it 28-22. Buccaneers move to 5-1. Eagles move to 2-4. Tom Brady, solid game. I think one of the biggest things that me and Max were just kind of talking about was Leonard Fournette's emergence as a top running back for the Buccaneers. He's getting pretty much all the carries to be 22-5 compared when you ratio him to Jones. Antonio Brown's looking fantastic for his age, and he's really making a stride back with Gronkowski out. OJ Howard stepped up, and I think it's just indicative of how Tom Brady passes around the football, does not stick to a single target. And this Buccaneers team is one to reckon with. On the other side of things, you got the Eagles. They're all right. Miles Sanders has been relatively unproductive. Jalen Hurts is still coming into his own. Their wide receiver course is still not great. Actually, they step in with Zach Ertz because Dallas Goedert goes out on COVID. With COVID, and Ertz steps up, and then they go ahead and trade him the day after for some picks,
fifth rounder and something else.
Yeah, I forget who it was, but I'm kind of excited for Ertz because Ertz in the Cardinals system should be better than he was with the Eagles behind Goddard. With Maxwell out for the season for the Cardinals, Ertz should fill that role pretty nicely. Maxwell's having somewhat of a breakout season, so we could see a little bit of a revival to Ertz's career possibly, just due to target shares with the Cardinals. But I'll have to see there. Sad to see him go. He had a great career with the Eagles, but Buccaneers take this one. Doesn't say much. Eagles are not a great team. They're not going to win the NFC East. And the Buccaneers are going to continue to roll on from here. I'm sure they would have liked win this one by more, but it is what it is. You take it and move on. Max?
The one thing I will say, the Eagles, they're not having a good season. They're not going to be among the playoff contenders. But I will say, as far as fantasy goes, Jalen Hurts might be one of the clutchest players because I've seen him in multiple games have like very few points to start the second half. Even the fourth quarter, he always comes through and gives you a 20-plus point game. So I don't know that maybe there could be something there because if he gets better, he could be a clutch quarterback moving on in reality football. But just something I thought I'd point out there.
Mm-hmm. So other than that, I guess we'll move on to the next game. Jaguars Dolphins. Jaguars take their first game of the season, as well as 20 games in a row they had lost. So
yep,
they break it right. They break it right here, 23-20. The Dolphins do not look good. Tua injured. I'm getting to the point where I'm questioning Tua's future with the Dolphins. I don't know if I believe in him 100%. He just has not put it out on the field in the time he spends. He doesn't seem like he's progressing enough. I feel like he was a really talented quarterback coming out of Alabama, and I haven't seen it from him. I want to see Tua do good because I just like him as a player. I like him as a person, but really hasn't produced anything. Myles Gaskin's been pretty much non-existent for this Dolphins team. We have Brown with 5 carries. I mean, you have hardly any rushing game in this entire game at all. And the Jaguars win this one, right? You had Trevor Lawrence, 319 yards and a touchdown, which was solid. James Robinson, 17 carries, 73 yards and a touchdown. And he had 7 receptions for 100 yards with Jones and a touchdown. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that this Jaguars team is really an oddity right here. I think the Dolphins really lost this one because at the end of the day, we know what's going on with Urban Meyer. Dolphins kind of just dropped. Honestly, I think the Dolphins just dropped this one, Max.
Yeah, I definitely think this says more about the Dolphins than the Jags. And it's just crazy to think what happened with the Dolphins between last year and this year. Like, yeah, they're always still kind of rebuilding. They're still young. I definitely think the lack of Myles Gaskin is really hurting them because he was definitely one of their better playmakers last year, and he's done next to nothing this year. Their defense is also nowhere as good as it was last year. So, and did they have really any significant losses on defense? Because they still have Xavier Howard and Byron Jones.
Jerome Baker is still solid.
Yeah. Christian Wilkins is decent.
I think it's a lack of leadership when it comes to the quarterback position. I think that's one of the major things they're lacking right now.
They're reeling from their quarterback potentially being a bust.
And who knows? Again, with how Xavier Howard was in the offseason and the whole contract situation, there might be something going on in the locker room that we don't know about.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It might be the start of the play. We won't know probably until the end of the season. We'll see where the Dolphins end up. We'll see what the players say when it comes to making comments at press conferences and stuff like that. But it doesn't look good for the Dolphins right now. Moving on from there, we have the Vikings and the Panthers. For everyone that's screaming at me in my group chats and my friends saying, "Oh, the Panthers' defense is so good," this is what you said. I'm like, no, I said their secondary on paper is absolutely elite. It's probably one of the best secondaries I've ever seen. On top of that, you got to remember the secondary is still young. You still have Dante Jackson, which I think is one of their oldest corners, besides AJ Bouye, obviously. But Dante Jackson's about 25, so everybody's about 25 and younger. They have a lot to grow into do, A, on defense, but B, again, this Panthers team is kind of all over the place. They're still without McCaffrey, who's been this injury-prone guy. And I said it in my fantasy league group chat, and I still got clowned for it, is if they look back to our podcast, if I remember correctly, I said don't draft if you're going to draft first overall, I wouldn't go McCaffrey personally. I'd go Henry because I don't believe McCaffrey with his injuries is a good pick in terms of fantasy. Fantastic player when he's on the field, but again, his high usage and now his injury details, it's just he's not looking like he's able to play out a full season, especially with the added game. If he's going to, they're going to have to lessen over his carries and his catches, because when you think about the high usage that the Panthers put on him, it only puts him at greater risk for an injury, despite how great of a player he is. Additionally to that, Sam Darnold, 270 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception. You saw a little bit of regression here from the Panthers, but they're still a young team and they still have some growing pains to do. They're 3-3. It's not horrible. On the Viking side of things, you steal this game, great. Kirk Cousins looked fantastic, 373 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook returned to form of Dalvin Cook, 140 yards and 29 carries and a touchdown. Adam Thielen looked good, 126 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson looked good with 80 yards of reception. I mean, if you're the Vikings in this one, you take it in overtime, you take the win. You're bouncing back from the start of the season. I have no complaints. Pretty even game here in terms of teams, just at different points in their franchises spots right now. Vikings are literally looking to capitalize on their roster, and the Panthers still looking to grow. Max?
So I think a big thing in this game, and I didn't watch the game, but I have a bunch of friends who are Panthers fans. I was also in the grocery store yesterday. I overheard 2 workers talking about this. There were 12 drop passes between the receivers in this game. And of course, I didn't watch it, so I don't know. I can't. Just as a general statement, say you take 12 of those drops and turn them into 7 catches, which is fairly reasonable because 5 catches is still a lot. I mean, 5 drops is still a lot. You just go based on mathematics and the fact that they were tied at the end of this game. If they catch 7 of those, and again, 5 drop passes is still pretty bad. They're going to win that game. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a Panthers fan, I mean, yeah, this loss sucks, but you can't be discouraged still because the team's still young and they still have a lot of promise, especially on offense. And even without McCaffrey, I mean, and I'm pretty much the narrative amongst Panthers fans is the loss of McCaffrey has totally ruined their offense, which of course I can't argue with too much because I haven't watched their games that closely, but just going off the fact that there were 12 drops in this game, I mean, they could have had a lot more. So you possibly could win that game, like I said. So don't get too discouraged because I don't think 12 drops is likely to happen again.
100% of fact. So from there, we have the Chargers and the Ravens. Ravens blow out the Chargers 34-6 in a pretty dumbfounding game. I mean, again, the Chargers have been very good this season. They dropped to 4-2. Justin Herbert did not look fantastic in this game. 195 yards, touchdown, and an interception. First of all, Chargers could not generate a rushing game for the life of them. The leading rusher was Justin Herbert with 12 yards, and then you had Austin Eckler, who's been pretty great.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, you had Austin Eckler, who's a pretty good run of the season. He only had 7 yards on 6 carries. And then Keenan Allen was held at 50 yards. Ultimately, Lamar Jackson had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 167 yards. Passing, he didn't look fantastic either, but again, that defense is really, I think, really stood out for me on this Ravens team. Freeman was their leading rusher with 53 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson with 51 yards. Andrews was their leading receiver with 68 yards and a touchdown. I mean, honestly, this Ravens team, they're 5-1, but I feel like the most inconsistent 5-1 team because we've seen them blow out the Chargers. We see them make a comeback win against the Chiefs, and then they lose the easier games. I don't know really where to place them. All I know is Lamar Jackson is obviously fantastic. He'll be able to put the team on their back, even though he makes 2 interceptions. He's such an electric runner and dynamic player that he's able to give that offensive boost it needs. But I don't know where this Ravens team's fault. All I know is that they're really good some weeks, but they're really bad some weeks. This is one of those weeks they're really good. Chargers made a couple of mistakes, and it really just was a landslide from there.
Yeah, I think this game honestly says a lot more about the Ravens and the fact that we don't know about the Ravens, if I'm being honest, because we look at the Chargers, they're having a terrific year. Justin Herbert is continuing to take steps to being the franchise quarterback for them. We know the Chargers have been a great team. But then the Ravens go into Baltimore and just get blown out. And I don't get what the Ravens, because they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Chargers, obviously, but then against the Lions, who are terrible, they need a 66-yarder with an improbable bounce to win that game. And then they almost lose to the Colts, who are also pretty bad. I just don't know where this team really stands. Like, I mean, they can clearly beat up against good teams and at least hang with them. There's no doubt about that. But I don't know. I don't want to question John Harbaugh, because he's one of the better head coaches in the league. But I don't get with this team falling apart against seemingly bad competition. Only the really good teams.
And my thing is that they might win their conference based upon how bad their conference has been this year.
They're leading the AFC right now. I never thought I'd say that.
They're in the AFC North. We didn't expect that. I mean, the Bengals are 4-2. Who would expect that, right? Yeah, the Bengals are 4-2. The Browns are 3-3, and the Steelers are 3-3. We know the Steelers are out of it. The Browns have been really inconsistent. They lost both their starting running backs, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the Bengals have been better than we thought. Jamar Chase has been absolutely fantastic, by far the best receiver out of his rookie class. And then the Ravens they're winning games, but I don't know really where they fall. I mean, they put up the most points in the NFC North. I'm looking at it right now. In terms of points against, they're third lowest. I mean, they're winning games. I can't really say anything bad about them. It's just I don't know really where they fall.
I'm with you. I don't know where. I can't get a read on them.
I think we're locking in them as a playoff team, but where they go in the playoffs, who knows? It really they got to show more consistency before I can really say anything about that.
Yep.
Moving on from there, we have the Rams and the Giants. Rams won this one 38-11. I mean, I remember I was sitting at a diner with my friend, and I look at the score because I was driving home back to school. I'm like, you know what? The Giants are up 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. This is fantastic. We're playing against the Rams. We're putting up some good defense. You know, we're really competing. And then the second quarter hits, and they put up 28 unanswered points. This Giants team is an absolute mess. I mean, we're talking about Joe Judge. His job should be up for grabs at this point, because again, he talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. His teams do not show discipline. They don't do any of the things that he says, and I'm concerned. Daniel Jones went 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Devontae Booker 12 carries, 41 yards. Our best receiver was Shepard with 76 yards. I mean, just such inconsistencies. Our defense played horrible. Again, the Rams are a good team, but the Giants are just not competing in any facet of anything. Stafford, 251 yards, 4 touchdowns. Darrell Henderson's been fantastic this season, 78 yards and a touchdown for him. Cooper Kupp's been the best receiver in football, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, Robert Woods only had 31 yards and a touchdown, but honestly, this Rams team is fantastic. You know, they're definitely Super Bowl contenders, and this Giants team just can't. It's simple as that.
I mean, we knew this game was going to be a blowout because it's the Rams versus the Giants, and I bring this up all the time, but another example of being all talk is when Dave Gettleman says we have improved the offensive line. 4 years later, what do you have to show for?
Yeah, their offensive line, I guess, has improved over the past couple of years, but by such minimal increments,
4 years,
such minimal increments that it means nothing.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, we have the Texans Colts. Colts take this one 31-3. I don't have much to say. Texans are a horrible team. You're anything to say, Max?
Yeah, expected. I would not been surprised if it was going to be a close game because AFC South versus AFC South. But I mean, the Texans suck. So
I mean, the Colts are probably the best 1-4 team in football. Again, just because they have talent on the roster. Taylor, 145 yards.
The line is bad.
Though. I know, but Taylor had 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a special running.
And I knew he was. Trust Carson Wentz get you over the top, though.
I mean, he's good enough to win you some games. I don't think this team's a playoff team, but I think there's out of the 1-4 teams, now 2-4 teams, I trust them the most out of majority of them.
Didn't T.Y. Hilton get hurt again?
I think so, yeah. But again, T.Y. Hilton's at the end of his career in terms of reigns anyway. But again, I like Paris Campbell. I like Pittman Jr. Adley Cox is a solid tight end. Hines is a good running back. I think Zach Pascal's solid. They're not fantastic players. Don't get me wrong. I didn't say they're
solid, but are they like really like?
Yeah, but
there's no one on the receiving core that scares
I don't see them as a playoff team, but I see them as a team that'll probably end up between the 5th and 10th pick in the draft. You know, they're not going to be one of those bottom tier teams.
Sense, yeah.
But the Texans, we know, are going to easily be a bottom tier team, top 3 pick, depending where they fall. Moving on from there, Chiefs Washington. Chiefs take this game pretty handily. Mahomes is, I don't know, they win this one, but again, Chiefs moved at 3-3, which we would have never expected going into the season for them to be 3-3 right now. With that being said, Patrick Mahomes and this offensive line, they're scary because I don't know if they're going to be Super Bowl contenders this year. If you watch that play, I've seen a couple highlights come out of this game, right? Think about the Mahomes highlights that you've seen come out of this game. I've seen him on two specific highlights. One where he runs around in circles and makes a great play. That's what Mahomes does. However, he can only do that so much. When the offensive line, as bad as it is, they're getting as much pressure on Mahomes as they are. You're going to have plays where, like, I think everyone's seen it at this point. If you look, Brian, if you want to put it up, this would be a great spot to put something up here. Look at the Mahomes play where he runs around in circles, runs back, is getting sacked, and chucks up a horrible ball for an interception. I mean, Mahomes is at his last wits in terms of his offensive line is not good enough to support the long type of throws that they like to run. They're a home run type of defense. They don't have the offensive line to support it. That's why I think is a majority of the reason they've struggled this season. Beyond the fact that their defense has been subpar, has probably been the worst defense in the NFL. Their defense has been the worst in the NFL. Their offensive line is good, and it's showing, right? Again, that Patrick Mahomes is trying to do so much. Again, his talent hasn't changed, just the offensive line has. He's trying to do so much. He's trying to force throws. It leads to interception, it leads to turnovers, and then you put him against that horrible defense that they have, and it leads to losses. You know, they went against the Washington football team because they're a lot better of a team. Don't get me wrong. They still have Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill, who their combined talent alone is enough to beat Washington, and it pretty much did this game, right? Because you have Edwards-Helaire on IR, so you pretty much were, depending on your receiving game, you got Kelsey 99 yards, Hill with 96 yards. Again, not a great game out of them, but again, bad game out of Washington. Heineke he's all right, but he's not going to do anything crazy for you. McKissick and Gibson have been relatively the past 3-4 weeks have been really unproductive. Terry McLaurin got shut down this game for only 28 yards. This Chiefs team concerns me. They beat the Washington football team here. Washington football team is not even going to make anywhere near the playoffs. The Chiefs will probably be a playoff team, but I'm questioning, especially looking at this game, are they going to be contenders? Right now, I say no. Max?
I'm with you right now. And it's not, and besides everything you just mentioned, especially on offense, they just look sloppy. I remember watching them against the Bills, and there were a ton of drop passes. The communication's not there. One of them went for a pick six. And I wouldn't expect this from an Andy Reid squad. And it's why I'm scared for them, but it's also why I'm saying I would think they'd get this together. And a similar thing happened 2 years ago where they weren't doing that well in the beginning of the year. It took them kind of till November, but once they hit mid-November, they really hit their stride. And let me tell you, I could see them honestly not making the playoffs because I think they've looked that bad so far. I mean, they're going to be fighting for a spot the whole way through, but I could see them missing. But I could just as easily see them maybe losing one or two more games and just winning the rest of the schedule out and going on another Super Bowl run. I think this team, they're wild cards because of the reputation, but right now they just don't have it.
And honestly, if I trust any coach in the NFL right now to be able to be dynamic enough to make this team work, it'd probably be Andy Reid. So you're right. For all we know, the Chiefs could go on a 10-game run here and go crazy, but right now they don't look it. Moving on from there, we have the Packers and Bears. Packers win this one 24-14. I don't have much to say about this game. I mean, Packers would have liked to probably win a little bit more with how desperate this Bears team is looking. Herbert Khalil, I believe his name. Khalil Herbert, rather. Sorry. Had a decent game here. 97 yards and a touchdown on 19 carries. Damian Williams coming back this week off of illness, rather. So I should be splitting the carries more there. So Khalil Herbert, I picked him up for this week. Didn't even use him. Sat on my bench. Won pretty handedly in fantasy, but I'm sure his usefulness is coming to an end here because David Montgomery's also going to come back. So in terms of fantasy, that's all I got to say about this game. Max?
The one thing I take away from this game is I'm sure you've seen the clip of Aaron Rodgers scoring that touchdown saying to Chicago, I still own you. I still own you. That's just, it's crazy, but it's just so iconic because knowing Rodgers, he's been to Soldier Field so many times, and he probably knows this is my last game at Soldier Field as a member of the Packers, and I just have to leave my legacy there and just let the fans know I own you guys. That's just one of those things that makes the sport so historical, so iconic, and so great.
100%. Moving on from there, we got the Bengals and the Lions. Bengals win this one 34-11. Again, not much of a competition here. I mean, this Lions team is horrible. Starting with the Bengals again. Joe Burrow's looking great. He's looking like he's making progressions. Not really into his own yet, but again, making progressions. He's on track to be the franchise quarterback that the Bengals are looking for. I don't know if he's really lived up to his pick yet, but we'll see. 271 yards, 3 touchdowns, interception for him. Joe Mixon, 94 yards on 18 carries. Most importantly, Jamar Chase, 97 yards. Didn't have a touchdown this game, but he's been fantastic. I don't know if you saw that block he made about 30, 40 yards down the field. He basically pancaked.
Oh, yeah.
He pancaked a safety or whatever it was for Joe Mixon to run into the end zone.
Yep.
He's been dynamic. I mean, Jamar Chase has been by far the best receiver. Not only is he showing it in talent, but right there he's showing it in effort. And I'm really liking this Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow combination. They fixed that offensive line.
You got Boyd.
Yeah. Also Tyler Boyd. He only had 1 reception for 7 yards, but he's not a bad player either. I'm liking what they're building with the Bengals. I think if they fix their offensive line, they got something at that offense going, and then they can go ahead and address the defense. The Lions. I mean, Campbell was obviously he pretty much called out Jared Goff and said he's not doing enough, which is crazy. Which is crazy for a coach to do. But what did you expect? Jared Goff. The Rams knew it. He's the limiting factor here. He's not as good as he's never lived up really to his first overall pick.
Not even close.
B, and he held back the Rams. And it shows with interim Matt Stafford, the Rams are what they are now. You have Jared Goff, 202 yards, 0 touchdowns, and interception against the Bengals, who do not have a really over-the-top fantastic defense. Swift only was held at 24 yards here in a touchdown. Hawkinson, 74 yards. This Lions team is awful. Again, they're 0-6 now. They're going to be competing for the Texans for the first overall pick. Max?
Not much more to say. The Bengals, I mean, we know the Bengals are good now, like as we've seen it, but the Lions just, oof.
100%. So moving on from here, we have the Cardinals and the Browns. Cardinals win this one 37-14. Cardinals move to 6-0. Browns move to 3-3. Starting with the Cardinals again, they're fantastic. I think Kyler Murray is the front runner, I think pretty clearly for MVP at this point. In my opinion, 229 yards, 4 touchdowns. James Conner was solid with 71 yards. Didn't really get Edmonds involved as much, 4 carries, pretty much up the entire time. AJ Green's been looking fantastic these past couple of games. 5 yards, 79 receptions. DeAndre Hopkins had 2 touchdowns and 3 receptions, 55 yards. DeAndre Hopkins still looks like he's injured to me. I think he's getting closer to being healthy, but he's just still not the DeAndre Hopkins that we've known. Christian Kirk had 75 yards and a touchdown. Again, don't have much to say about this Cardinals team other than they play pretty solid defense, but I think one of the biggest issues here, Baker Mayfield is playing with the torn labrum. I think it's pretty obvious. He's throwing a couple bad picks, especially trying to get the Browns back in the games. All the B teams, but getting the Browns back in these games, he's made a couple bad plays, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He's playing with the torn labrum, so I'm sure it's hard to throw with that. I mean, I kind of messed up my shoulder benching yesterday, and it really hurts right now, and I'm questioning whether I should go to the doctor. And I'm just thinking, right? It's a little painful, but it is what it is. Don't worry, guys. My point being is I can only imagine Baker Mayfield playing on an NFL field trying to throw a football with a torn labrum. It's going to be pretty difficult. On top of that, his top 2 running backs are now out. Kareem Hunt went down with a really weird injury. I was afraid it was a torn ACL because it looked like it was non-contact. Goes down. Apparently, it's some sort of cap injury. They're not really specifying, but 4 to 6 weeks is his timetable. I'm really hoping it's 4 to 6 weeks and not longer because I have Kareem Hunt. I'm really contingent on him playing well for me to win the championship. But so yeah, and then obviously Chubb is still out, making Dearness Johnson their top running back this week. So go get him in fantasy. He's going to be really good. Think about it. He's going to be probably getting the usage of Chubb and Kareem Hunt combined. If they don't go to the next running back, I forgot his name. So again, Dearness Johnson really good pick up this week. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been really solid this season in terms of his value because, again, he's that bench player, really doesn't get many touches. Beckham with 79 yards and 5 catches. Other than that, don't have much to say. Again, this Browns team's been really disappointing. I think their defense has been atrocious, in my opinion, especially the past 3 games. They would have given up like nearly 40 points for the past 3 games in a row. For how much talent they have in the defense, they need to figure it out. This team is a mess in multiple different ways in terms of Baker Mayfield's injured, running backs are injured, the defense has not lived up to where they're supposed to be in terms of the talent they have. This Browns team has a lot of problems, and I think as good as they should have been coming into the season, they're falling apart really quickly. Facts?
I think a lot of it definitely has to do with injuries too, because I mean, think about it. Your quarterback has a torn labrum, top 2 running backs gone, and your top 2 tackles. I mean, I picked the Browns to win this game, and honestly, that was idiotic because I mean, I'd been hearing. I guess I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't want to believe the Baker injury reports or whatever. But like, I also didn't know in that game that Wills and Colin going to be out. Anyway, I mean,
On
Is it
top of
really
that,
what the Browns doing, or is it their injury at this point? Because that is after a while, when you have to rely on your defense, they're going to get tired, especially against the Cardinals.
I totally forgot to mention that Conklin and Wills were also out. Again, injuries, the defense is not playing fantastic. It's just a combination of things that maybe when they get all the players back, they can make their way into the playoffs and maybe make it go on a run if they get hot at the right time. But right now, they're just not looking good. Moving on from there, Cowboys Patriots. Pretty incredible game here. Cowboys win it in the last seconds. So great pass to CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott showing why he's an MVP candidate running. Dak Prescott, 445 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, Dak Prescott is having the best, best season of his career so far. He's been that good. Ezekiel Elliott has been really consistent, 69 yards and 17 carries. Again, CeeDee Lamb, 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fantastic game for him. Dalton Schultz has emerged as a top 5 tight end in the league at this point. Has been very good this season. 5 receptions, 79 yards. Patriots side of things, again, Mac Jones is all right, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception. Damian Harris, 101 yards and a touchdown. Ultimately, this Patriots team, they're doing as best as they can with the talent they have. Again, it's been the story all season. They're 2-4 based on Bill Belichick's coaching. They'd be 0-6 if it was for the talent they have on this roster. Simple as that. That being said, I want to go back to the Cowboys. Trayvon Diggs is having one of the best defensive seasons we've seen in a long time. He's now up to 7 interceptions through 6 games. Apparently, if I remember correctly, he has more interceptions, I think 27 franchises or something like that altogether. So he has more interceptions as a single player than most franchises have is altogether during the season. He's just having one of those seasons where he's an absolute ball hawk. I would say a little bit due to luck, but again, a lot of it's due to the hard work he's put in the offseason. They're really capitalizing. I mean, Trayvon Diggs, in my opinion, is the best corner in football right now, and I don't think it's really any competition. Max?
I definitely agree with Trayvon Diggs is having one of the best seasons we've ever seen. When is the last time or anyone finished with a pick in a game? Because he's at 7. There's been 6 games they played. I don't remember the last time that happened.
I don't know if it's ever happened. I mean, look at some of the greats. Their interception career totals are like 50, 60.
Even Xavier Howard had something like 10 last year, and that was absurd.
So this Trayvon Diggs, he's going insane. It's good. I'm excited to watch him for the season.
One of the big reasons I picked the Pats to upset in this game, and they obviously came close. But one of the big reasons I did is because I trust Bill Belichick over Mike McCarthy, and we're just seeing Belichick's coaching, especially with Mac Jones. If you just look at the quarterbacks from last year's class, from talent-wise, Mac Jones should be the worst in the first round. He's been the best so far. I mean, I wouldn't say he's going to end up better than all the other guys, but just he looks comfortable out there, and he's getting better game after game after game. And he doesn't have the intangibles, like the athleticism, to be a game changer. It's just amazing how comfortable he's looked, especially in the first 2 drives of the game. He looked like a seasoned pro out there.
And I can't say I'm overly surprised because think about it. At the time, I'm like, oh, what is Bill Belichick doing? But at the same time, it's Bill Belichick. Again, I always say on the podcast, never go against Bill Belichick.
Right. The
Patriots went and drafted a quarterback in the first round. It wasn't a mistake. Bill Belichick knew who he was drafting. The last time they drafted a quarterback was Jarrett Stidham in the 4th round. Again, 4th rounder. They're not giving up as much to get him. He's not as valuable. They're willing to take a shot on him. But now we're looking at Mac Jones, who's been a 1st rounder. He's playing fantastic for a rookie. So I don't think it was an accident. But again, the team around him is just lackluster, to say the least. Moving on from there, we had the Raiders-Broncos. Broncos take this one 34-24.
The Raiders won this game, I believe.
Oh, yes, I said the Raiders won this game 34-24. I'm looking at it, and I still say it wrong. Raiders moved to 4-2. Broncos moved to 3-3. Derek Carr, 2 touchdowns, 341 yards. He's been really good this entire season. Pretty much the revival of his career this season. Josh Jacobs, 53 yards and a touchdown. Henry Ruggs has been playing pretty well, 97 yards and a touchdown. The Broncos side of things, again, Teddy Bridgewater was all right. I mean, these Raiders defense put a pretty good game here. 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions for Teddy Bridgewater and 334 yards. Williams with 53 yards. And Noah Fant's been probably, again, one of those top guys who kind of moved his way into maybe a top 5 tight end in the league this season. 97 yards and a touchdown. Cortland Sutton's been pretty good. 94 yards and a touchdown. Tim Patrick's been also really good with 42 yards and a touchdown. Ultimately, the Raiders are really good this season. I think they've cultivated something really good, but I now question, and we didn't really get to cover because we didn't have an episode last week, but John Gruden now being out due to the email scandal. Where does this Raiders team go? And in terms of the email scandal, I just want to say this. I mean, I'm if you guys have been following this podcast for a while, I'm not one to shy away from my opinion here. I do question, it's John Gruden said it. We don't know the extent of everything I think John Gruden has said, but it was 10 years ago. So does he feel the same way that he does now that he did back then? Again, not saying anything he said was right. I'm just saying, is it forgivable? It was 10 years ago. As he became a different person. However, I don't question him stepping down. I understand the move. B, again, a guy like John Gruden, I don't know how many emails he sent. A, why is he the only one really facing repercussions for this? Everyone else that was involved in those emails, I haven't really heard much about them or them facing repercussions, but they never said anything back. B, C, you got people like Dan Schneider, who leader of the Washington football team, who probably said worse. And we've heard stories about the sexual assault allegations that come out of the higher ups for Washington. And I've never seen anything in terms of details get released. And I think at the end of the day, them firing John Gruden is partially because they don't like him as a business standpoint, and that they'll protect owners like Dan Schneider. And I don't really understand the move 100%. And it's sad because a lot of people like John Gruden. They like the guy he was. And it's kind of sad to see like his character die in a way, even though it's real life. It's a really interesting situation. Again, not defending anything he said, don't get me wrong. It's just context, I think, matters. Max, you don't have to say anything about that, but any comments on the game?
I will say one thing, and I feel like this had to have affected the locker room dynamic.
Yeah.
And the main reason why is because if you guys remember early in the summer, Carl Nassib was one of the players who came out as openly gay. And how did that dynamic work? Because he said some, I didn't read the emails, but he said some anti-gay stuff in the emails. You have to wonder how he was received in the locker room after that, because I mean, he also said like racist things too. And obviously a lot of players on most NFL teams are black. So like that, I don't know that it probably had to do more than just like what he said. Could he have existed in that locker room and be respected? Because you saw that the next game after those came out, they put in their worst performance of the year.
And the thing is, I think he asked for a day off after that. Obviously trying to take in what happened. And you're right. How did it affect the locker room? It should be. I wonder how it did. What were the comments? I'm sure a lot of the players, after hearing what he said, were happy to see him go. But I don't know where the Raiders team goes now. I mean,
it's a shame because they were looking so good, and Derek Carr has done. I mean, one thing he's done really well this year is spread the ball out between Darren Waller, obviously Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow was emerging. Even Brian Edwards is getting some catches too. And there was one throw he made in this game against the Broncos to Kenyon Drake, which was an absolute dime. And this team had. I mean, they still do have a lot of promise. Just like I just can't look at their season the same way now that they've had this happen. So who knows?
Moving on from there, we have the Seahawks and the Steelers. Steelers take this one 23-20. The Seahawks don't have Russell Wilson. Pretty much explains their offense. Alex Collins steps up to 101 yards and a touchdown, which sucks because I dropped him. DK Metcalf was limited in this game. Tyler Lockett was pretty much non-existent. In terms of the Steelers, obviously that's what we're looking at here. They had a solid game, but I think most importantly, one thing that I noticed is like Jamal Adams, his fall off from how he played as the Jets is really significant in this game. And everyone pretty much saw it at this point. He got nailed in the face. Should have been an interception.
After saying in the pregame lineup, I'm the best in the nation.
Exactly. So it's indicative of who Jamal Adams has become. He's become like a shell of his former self. But this Seahawks defense is not fantastic, but and it seems like Jamal Adams' fit is questionable at this point. I don't know, where this defense stands. Jamal Adams isn't as good as he was there without Russell Wilson. Seahawks team is just not looking good, not at all. I'll say that without Chris Carson as well for this week. Going on the Steelers side of things again, I think it says more about the Seahawks in terms of how bad of a spot they're in right now than it does the Steelers. Brad Roethlisberger, 229 yards and a touchdown. Najee Harris doing what he does, 81 yards on 24 carries. And then Deontay Johnson was our lead receiver with 71 yards. Obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster, which we didn't get to cover last week, is out for the season now. So their wide receiver pool is looking a little bit thinner. Again, the Steelers team is all about their defense. I mean, TJ Watt was a monster in this game in particular.
Oh, yeah.
2 sacks, 6 tackles, and one assisted 1 assisted tackle, and honestly, hit the amount of pressures, which is obviously is not a stat that's really listed. As his main stats can't be undenied either. I mean,
He had the strip sack that essentially won them the game in overtime.
So again, Steelers defense carried by TJ Watt, which carries the Steelers, and then the Seahawks without Russell Wilson, who's just kind of lost right now. Anything else, Max?
I mean, it doesn't say much about the Steelers because even though we know the Seahawks are shorthanded, the Steelers offense is going to score much because Big Ben's going to limit them. But yeah, this Seahawks starting I'm more surprised Geno Smith's still in the NFL because watching him play for the Jets, he was awful. I don't know. I figured their offense would be a catastrophe at this point, but they scored 20 points. So I mean, either way, it's still a bad spot. Their receivers can't be productive with a bad quarterback in play. And talk about Jamal Adams. That's one of the craziest things because the trading, it's completely blown up in their face at this point, and the Jets fleeced them. They got fleeced by the Jets.
God. I also wanted to mention, rumor mill has it that Ken Newton went ahead and got the vaccine and is now talking with the Seahawks for a possible spot there, which I guess he would be an upgrade over Geno Smith. I'd probably say so.
It's not going to lead them anywhere, though.
Yeah, it's just replacement.
They have more talent than the Pats, but
yeah. So moving on from there, final game of the week, my favorite game. Max has been waiting on this one for sure. Titans take the game against the Bills, 34-31 in a pretty fantastic fashion. Going off the Bills, again, they're still a fantastic team. The Titans were just better in this one. Josh Allen, again, probably my number 2 for MVP this season, 353 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 reception. No matter what defense it is, they're gonna struggle against Josh Allen. He's that talented. The Titans did do a great job against the rushing game, though. Held Devin Singletary to 27 yards rushing. Emmanuel Sanders stepped up for 91 yards, and then you had Stephon Diggs 89 yards and a touchdown. You also had Beasley for 88 yards and a touchdown. Dawson Knox, who's I think is top 2 tight end in the league this season, goes down with an injury. They're on bye week. I'm not really sure where he lands, but Dawson Knox again, it was emerged as a really good tight end this season. Goes down with an injury, so it's somewhat of a concern, but wouldn't really put the Bills out of Super Bowl contention at all. Going over to the Titans side of things, I think this is where the fun begins. Ryan Tannehill was okay in this game, not fantastic. 216 yards and an interception. And then A.J. Brown stepped up with 91 yards. And then Julio Jones with 59 yards. And he had that great catch on the sideline, which was like a bounce-up catch to the tiptoe. I mean, that was fantastic. That's what you want out of Julio Jones. But the story here, and I'm sure Max is going to be excited to talk about this, is Derrick Henry. This is why I said to draft him first overall. I mean, I remember I saw a stat line where I think his past 7 or 8 games, he's had like 150 yards nearly in almost every game, and then 3 touchdowns, barring I think one of those games, every single game. I mean, he is fantastic. By far, I think, in my opinion, the best player in the NFL this season. And obviously, he's not going to MVP because it's just how the MVP award goes. I'd probably say he's deserving of the MVP. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
he's right there.
Over this in a second.
He's right there with Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. But again, I mean, I was just talking about it with my roommate last night, and it's just also didn't even mention the stats that he had: 143 yards on 20 carries and 3 touchdowns, 7.2 yards a carry. He had, I think, 21 miles an hour top running speed on that breakaway run that he had. Just the amount of power and speed that he has. I mean, he is fantastic. I would have never imagined him doing what he did coming out of Alabama. He's one of those guys that came out of Alabama. It's like, yes, he has the potential to do what he does now, but no one actually expected him to achieve it. No one expected the 6'3", 250 round running back to be able to not only have the power, but the speed and the lack of injuries to be able to do what he's doing in the NFL. These type of guys that Derrick Henry is modeled after, those big, really, really big running backs, they don't last long in the NFL. They get banged up, they get injured, or they don't have the speed to breakaway runs. Derrick Henry has it all. His stiff arm is disgusting. His speed, disgusting. I mean, he is once in a generation type talent, and he's pretty much the reason why the Titans are winning games. Over the past 2-3 games, he's been one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason the Titans have won these past couple games. Titans moved 4-2, Bills moved 4-2. I expect both teams to make the playoffs and make a Super Bowl run. Max?
So I'll just go over the game as a whole at first. So talk about the offense, especially beginning of the game. Looked awful. Ryan Tannehill wasn't finding the receivers. He had a bad pick early in the game. That was the interception you referenced. Got a lot better at the end of the game, and A.J. Brown really turned it on. He ended up going 7 for 91 yards, and the run game obviously opened that up. But who would have thought it was the defense who made plays to help win the game, besides Henry, obviously. But look past the surface of them giving up 31 points. And I especially want to talk about the defensive line. Harold Landry is turning in easily his best season yet. He's been one of the best edge rushers in the league so far this year. He got 2 sacks last night. Denico Autry got a pass deflection that resulted in a Kevin Byard interception, which turned into a touchdown with a short field. Bud Dupree didn't get a sack, and he's still probably recuperating from his injury that he set himself back on by playing too early. But he had a pass deflection last night. And was getting in the backfield. He made his presence felt. And then big Jeffrey Simmons had a sack last night, and he had the stop too. He had that stop against Josh Allen on the quarterback sneak that won the game. Just amazing stuff from this defensive line all around. So much more improved than last year. And it was a classic game of bend but don't break, where the Bills would get deep into territory, but they wouldn't get those touchdowns. Last couple of weeks ago against the Jets, when we lost that game, a big problem for our offense was getting field goals instead of touchdowns. Well, the defense last night forced the Bills to get field goals instead of touchdowns, and that played a huge difference. But let's set aside some time to talk about Derrick Henry right now, okay? For reference, so he's won the rushing title 2 years in a row. Last year, 2,027 yards on the ground, 17 touchdowns, 114 receiving yards, okay? At this point in the year, he's at 783 rush yards in 6 games, 10 touchdowns, 138 reception yards, which is more than what he had last year. He's currently the leading rusher by 250 yards. He's averaging 130 and a half yards per game, and that's higher than his average of 126.7 last year. And the scariest part of all of this is he usually gets better in November and December. Forget about him winning the rushing title. Unless something completely unforeseen happens, he has that in the bag. And honestly, forget about even him making his case for a Hall of Fame, because every week that goes by, he's making a stronger and stronger case for a first ballot Hall of Famer. Are we talking about him, if he continues the pace he usually goes on and gets better in November and December, are we talking about him potentially winning the MVP this year? I think he might. And it's not like the Titans are running plays that are outscoring the defense. It's just him going up the middle every time he gets these carries. It's the same thing over and over again.
I mean, look at that hold that he hit. He read that play perfectly. It wasn't necessarily designed for him to hit. I think he was probably in the B-C gap at that point. You had a couple of the linemen washed down. He hits the right hole, pretty much bounces off that guy who's getting. I think he had either a tight end on him, the linebacker getting chipped, and then the amount of speed that he had in that is ridiculous. I mean, think about it. He ran faster than I think the corner and the safety.
Yeah,
who probably should have had good angles.
Left him in the dust.
Yeah, I mean, he burned them. And it's credible because they should have had a good, they had a good 10-yard head start to make an angle on that tackle, and they did. They just weren't fast enough.
And here's a question I have for you. So last year, he obviously ran for 2,000 plus. Assuming he does it this year, which he's well on pace for, let me tell you right now, even without the 17th game, he's well on pace for over 2,000 yards.
Yeah.
Is 2,000, even without an MVP or a championship, is 2 straight 2,000-yard seasons for a running back, especially in this day and age, enough to be a Hall of Famer?
I think so.
I think so too. Mm-hmm. Like that's ridiculous. Especially in today's NFL, which places such an emphasis on passing the ball.
Yeah.
Stupid. And especially if he gets over 300 receiving yards, which he's currently on pace to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, I don't think those if you had those 2 seasons and retired, I wouldn't say enough, but as long as he has somewhat decent seasons after that, I think it's enough.
And especially without the good playoff performance last year, because he obviously didn't have a good game in the 2019 playoffs, absolutely lethal.
100%. So moving on from there, we have our lightning round of picks. Week 7. I hope you're ready to go, Max.
Yep, I'm ready.
Yeah, all right. So week 7 lightning picks. Here we go. Broncos, Browns. I'm taking the Broncos by a small margin in this one.
I'm going coin flip. I'm picking the Browns just because they're home and I think they're better. This could go either way, though. This is really a tough one to pick.
I just don't trust the Browns offense in terms of Baker being injured and not having both their starting running backs, and then on top of their defense not playing well. I'm going with the Broncos there. Chiefs, Titans. This one's another coin flip. Should be a good game. I'm going to go Titans here. Coming off of, I think I'm going to carry the momentum from the Bills game right into the Chiefs game and take that game. Max?
This is another coin flip game, and me being the neurotic fan I am, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Totally emotional pick right there.
So going out from there, we have Washington Packers pretty easily. I don't think
Packers
anybody else there.
million.
Bengals Ravens. I think this one could be oddly competitive again because the Ravens are inconsistent. The Bengals been playing really well. I'm still going to go with the Ravens here by a small margin.
I'm going with the Bengals to play spoiler in this one.
Okay.
I think it's going to be one of those games where the Bengals are seen as the inferior team because they've always been in this rivalry. I think Joe Burrow's going to go in and have a day. I think they're going to win it. I think the Ravens are due to lose another one, and I think this is going to be the one.
Yeah, Panthers Giants. I'm going with the Panthers. I just have no faith in the Giants, and the Panthers defense is really solid. And at some point,
Panthers offense can't be as bad as it was last week in terms of the drops.
Exactly. Falcons Dolphins. I'm taking the Falcons here. The Dolphins have been an absolute mess. And
Yep.
Matt Ryan's shown a little bit of promise. Kyle Pitts has shown a little bit of promise. Calvin Ridley, decent amount of promise, And then they're going to get Cordell Patterson back this week, who's, I think, a top 3 running back in the NFL this season by the numbers, which I don't know if Hill was just saying that, but has been very efficient. I think he's averaging over 10 yards a carry. So I'm definitely taking the Falcons with that one. Jets, Patriots. I'm taking the Patriots. Patriots have the best number. Yep. Eagles, Raiders. I'm probably going to go with the Eagles here. I just don't trust the Raiders. But
I'm going to go with the Raiders just because I think the Eagles are that bad, but I could definitely see the Raiders dropping this one.
This could be one where they drop. Lions, Rams easily.
Rams by – well, let's preface this right here. Last year, the Rams played the Jets when they were winless, and we all said Rams by a million. So not saying it's going to happen here, but especially with Matt Stafford against his former team. But it's just one of those things goes to show anything can happen. So while I take the Rams by a large margin, just keep that in the back of your head.
Buccaneers, Bears. I'm taking the Buccaneers.
Bucks, yep.
Texans, Cardinals. I'm taking the Cardinals.
Cards.
49ers, Colts. I'm taking the 49ers.
Yep.
Seahawks, Saints. I'm taking the Saints because the Seahawks, I don't know where they are right now.
I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with the Seahawks for that reason because I don't know where the Saints are because
That's true.
Consistent and we can't get a read on them week to week.
That's true. And then that wraps up our week. I mean, Max, do you have any other comments?
Not really.
This upcoming week is going to be a lot of highly contested games and a lot of pretty boring. So it's also they're calling this week bye-mageddon because I think a ton of teams have byes this upcoming week. I know the Bills have a bye. Who else has a bye? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Bills have a bye. The Chargers have a bye. I think it's a total of 6 teams have a bye. The Cowboys have a bye. And a lot of my players are on bye this week. So other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. See you guys next time. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry we missed last week. Have a great day.